So, out of these three, I'm going to make a point out of this one here of the material that's the most difficult to work, right? I'm going to work these off camera because they are more delicate and they're higher grade. I don't want to mess these up. Okay, so I'm going to work on these off camera, and I'm going to try to kill two birds with one stone with this. I'm going to finish it out. That's one bird, and then I'm going to put a little twist in the tip. That's bird number 2. So I got a request for explaining how to put a twist in the tip, or how to make a twisted blade. Previously, when I asked if there was anybody who was interested, and sure enough, there was someone interested in seeing how to put a twist in there. Now, the main thing that you need to have before you could put a twist in the point or in the blade is thickness. It's one of those types that requires thickness. I was discussing that earlier about your approach for different types of points, and this type of point with a twist in it has to be thick. So your approach has to start with a thick point or a thick biface in mind. It's not going to be thick when I finish it, but it does need thickness to begin with because of that twist, and you'll see what I mean later. It's hard to explain why you need thickness, but the thicker it is, the more of a twist you can put into it. Okay, so keep that in mind too. This is not all that thick, so the twist is not going to be all that extreme. If it was thicker, I could put more of an extreme twist in it. Okay, I am still going to thin down the blade, but it's not going to look thin from the side. It's going to look thin when I turn it slightly. Okay, straight from the side, it's not going to look that thin, but if I turn it slightly, it will look thin. Okay, all right. So most of this is going to be done with indirect percussion. The final thinning with pressure, the final thinning will be done with pressure, and the final sharpening with pressure. Yeah, I'm going to do a lot of this with indirect percussion. Because I still got to get rid of some thickness down here. Down here near the stem, it doesn't need to be thick. It's just up here near the point where it's going to twist that needs to be thick. Okay, so I'm going to be shaving some of this off down here in the middle. Alright, with some indirect percussion. I'll explain a little bit, but I've got a lot of videos explaining the indirect percussion stuff. You just got to make sure you abrade it a little bit more than usual. A little bit more than usual, because indirect percussion is very harsh on the edge. So you have to abrade it a little more than usual compared to, say, a softer tool like a lead-filled bopper. You know, if it's a copper cap with lead in it, it's kind of spongy. You don't need to abrade it as much because it's less harsh on the edge, as an example. Or with antler, it's kind of spongy as well. Or with bone, you don't need to abrade as much. A hammerstone, sometimes you do need to abrade a lot with the harder hammerstones, but a softer hammerstone you may not need to. That's what I mean by abrading it more than normal. On average, you don't need to abrade this much, but I do need to with a copper or a steel indirect percussion tool. Okay? All right. But as far as the angles go, they're pretty much the same with just minor tweaks. No matter what I do, the angle is going to be about the same, either percussion or pressure, with just minor tweaks depending on the length of the flake I want, the thickness of the flake I want, that sort of thing. You know, you can, I was talking about something earlier. I should probably clarify even more. as far as the technique goes. See, this is a long, narrow flake. Okay, there's a certain technique to generating that. I followed a ridge. You can see the ridge on that flake. See that? Long, narrow flakes, they like these ridges and the convexity. See, it's slightly curved. So it likes this much convexity and a ridge and a very strong striking area. The longer the flake, the more force, right? So it needs a good amount of grinding or abrading so that good amount of force can carry through without crushing the point of applied force. Okay, kind of technical terms there, but the point of applied force needs to be robust and strong enough to transfer the energy to achieve a long flake. How much energy? It depends on the material and everything. Everything is interrelated. The material quality, the tool quality, the mallet quality, the speed of the mallet, the amount of support on the piece, the mass of the piece. There's so many different variables that I probably missed some in there, so I'm not going to go over too many of the variables. Just know that after a while you get to know how to do that. Second nature. Okay? All right. But I'm going to explain a little bit more on what I mean by adjusting the technique to the edge or adjusting the edge to your technique. Okay? I'm going to explain that a little bit better. Or try to. Or, explain it again or add more words to the explanation, however you want to look at it. So, at this stage, I am going to have to pay more attention to my technique and adjust the edge to that technique at this stage, because it's going to be special. It's going to have a little twist to it, and it's going to have a lot of these longer flakes that go right to the center, these long narrow flakes that go to the center when I do the twist area. Hold on, I got to answer a phone call. Okay, I'm back. All right, so as I was saying, I'm going to have to adjust the edge to my technique to generate the kind of flakes that I need to do this twisting. All right, on the upper half. On the lower half, I'm just going to opportunistically take flakes. So I'm going to adjust my technique to the edge. So what that means is I'm just going to need a little bit of a flake here. So what I'm going to do is adjust the way I strike to take off a little flake there. I change the angle and change the depth of the overlap onto the edge, onto the surface. Adjust the overlap onto the surface just a little bit to hit downward, so I change the angle using this. So I'm just taking opportunistic flakes to smooth out lumpy areas, and I'm just adjusting according to the edge. I'm not adjusting the edge to my technique. Okay, I'm going with the edge that I got and removing little flakes, and I'm adjusting the way I'm holding it and striking to achieve the result. Okay, so I'm just taking opportunistic flakes to remove lumps and using the platforms that I've already got and not adjusting the edge. I'm just going to adjust my striking. See, this is below center line, so I'm going to adjust a little bit to scoop out some material to get rid of that lump. When you hit on a platform or a striking area that's above the center line, it's going to scoop out, but it's okay in this case. Okay, so I only need to go a little ways inward. See how it scooped it? But that's okay. So I'm adjusting my technique to the edge. Whereas if I had adjusted the edge to my technique, I would have, you know, either pressure flake that downward to move the edge this way. So just take a typical, let's say, oval flake instead of a wide flat scoop out. I would have taken an oval flake, which is longer than this, but not as wide. You know, I could take the oval shaped flakes all over the place, but I would need to adjust the edge for those. In this way, I'm just taking various flakes of various sizes and shapes with the edge that I currently have. So, to add more words, when I adjust my technique to the edge, I don't modify the edge. I just go, I make doo-doo with what I got on the edge and adjust what I do to take flakes off that I need. It can be a long flake, short flake, scooped out flake, very thin flake, all kinds of different flakes. Sometimes a multiple flakes to do what I want. On the other side of the coin, if I wanted the same kind of flake every time, no matter what, I would have to adjust the edge to produce that same type of flake no matter what. And when I'm up here on the tip, I need to use the same kind of flake over and over and over again. So I will be adjusting the edge to accomplish that. Now, some of you might say, well, can you adjust your technique to the edge to produce the same type of flake over and over again? No, not usually. Sometimes the edge will not allow you to take the kind of flake that you're trying to accomplish. It just, from physics, it's just not going to happen. So there are exceptions to it, right? Sometimes you can get away with producing the same flake over and over again. It looks the same, but the edge is all wonky. But you can still produce the same looking flake. Yeah, it is possible to do that, but it's dicey. It doesn't always happen. You have to depend upon some luck. If you get a lot of the same kind of flakes with a wonky edge, it's not prepared, it's opportunistic, you're lucky. In other words, to get the same kind of flake over and over and over again, the edge has to be adjusted to fit all the variables needed for that type of flake, so you can obtain, have a reasonable chance of obtaining that shape of flake. Okay? All right. Hopefully the additional words will clarify the situation. We'll see in the comments section. Okay, so this flake is another wide one. And I just scooped it out slightly because, that one was also above center line. But that's okay. I'm looking just to eliminate some lumps on the edge here. If I want to drive it in further, drive these flakes in further, I will lower that striking area. It helps me drive flakes further that way. Okay, so I'm just going to go around and probably not explain these because it's difficult to explain and do it the way I want. So hold on. I'm just going to thin down this stem area with a combination of opportunistic flakes and adjusting the edge to get what I want. It can't be all opportunistic at this stage because it's getting thinner, so I am going to have to use a combination of modifying the edge to get what I want, and opportunistic edge strikes. You might say, well, grinding is modifying the edge. Yeah, but it's not all that predictable. I'm just looking to see what I get. Sometimes I don't get what I think I'm going to get. Abrading is not a reliable way to adjust the edge other than just making it duller in general. You can kind of get good at what I call hammer stoning with the abrader to get a predictable result, or a more predictable result on the edge. Yeah, but I'm not doing that now. I'll let you know if I'm using the abrader more carefully. Right now, what I'm doing is a combination of opportunistic flakes and flakes from edges that I consciously prepare ahead of time. That is not entirely possible with the abrader. I may just modify it slightly with percussion or pressure if when I can't get what I want. As far as opportunities, so far I can get what I want with opportunistic flaking, but soon I'm probably going to have to adjust it with a pressure flaker. We'll see. I can also adjust the edge with the percussion tool. Yeah. I try not to break out the pressure flaker unless it's absolutely necessary, because it kind of changes the mindset. Okay, so I'm basically just depending on some luck here to get this thin down. If the luck runs out, then what I'll do is I'll change the strategy on modifying the edge. See, I can move the edge that way with a few tiny little percussion flakes, and then abrade it so it's lower, and that way I can send a more reasonable flake instead of gambling with. I gambled with that one, but it seemed to work out okay. But the lower half I'm going to be thinning, so it doesn't need a twist in it. I'm going to leave this upper half alone and leave it thick so that when I do the twist it'll work. Yeah. If it's too thick, it won't work. I mean, if it's too thin, the twist won't work. I gotta be careful how I say these things. Alright, so that worked pretty good. Yeah. I didn't think it was going to work that good, but I'll take it. Yeah. Usually it just fans out pretty much equally on both sides, but that one went. I did aim it in that direction, but that worked better than I thought. Okay, so, but I can't be thinning this upper part very much. Okay, so I got to be careful with these kind of flakes. That might look good, but it's not that great in terms of what my goal is. I got to leave this upper part thick, so I can't be having too much of this going on. I can't be intruding too much into the upper blade. Alright, so I think I'm pretty much done the basic shape. Yeah, there we go. Nice. Okay, so the lower half is pretty much done as far as thinning. Yeah. Now it's the upper part, the harder part, because I've got to be more persnickety about how I treat this edge, because every flake needs to be pretty much the same up here. Okay, down here I can be all wonky and these flakes can be different sizes, but up here it's going to be more confined as far as the type of flake that I need. Okay, all right, because it's going to have to be like a bevel. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to be beveling, and these flakes will be like parallel type flakes. Yeah, it looks nice when they're parallel when you do a twist. You can do a twisted blade with random flakes like this, but it doesn't look as good. Besides, the upper part of a lot of these real blades had parallel flaking, or what they called pattern flaking. Yeah. Okay. This is not a reproduction. This is just showing you how twisted points are made, as far as how I make them. Okay. This is not a reproduction. This is not showing you how I think they were made in the past. This is how I make the twisted blades. And maybe they were made this way in the past. Okay. So that was a smooth out, because it would look too lumpy there. Okay. So I'm going to be taking flakes off of this side like a bevel all the way around, all the way along this side. I'm going to leave this alone, and I'm going to do a bevel over here. Okay, so basically two bevels. Bevel there, bevel there, and it's already a little bit twisted. You can see that there's a lot of mass up here and a lot of mass down here. That's important. Okay, it's already looking like it can be twisting in that way. You'll see how it develops in a minute. Yeah, I do need to make it more symmetrical as far as the outline goes, so I can do that. But I got to make sure that I'm doing it in a certain direction, just this direction only, not messing with this part, and in this direction only, not messing with this part. All right. So when you have a preform, you got to make sure you're not going to mess with one of these sides of each face, and determine how you're going to be beveling it, because a twist is basically an extreme bevel. Okay, basically that's what it is. A twist is basically an extreme bevel on both sides of the face. Okay, so gotta make sure I don't lose track of which way the bevel is gonna go, and just start flaking. Now I'm doing it at random right now, it seems, because the edge is kind of random. So I'm taking flakes off where I need to make it more consistent. But I got to make sure I don't go over into the area where I'm not supposed to touch. Okay, so that's the thing. The flakes should be nice and long, but not too long. Just like a regular bevel. A bevel doesn't go across the whole face. It just is part of the face. So in this case, it'll be up to halfway across the face, at the most. So right now it's still kind of random, but as I progress, it have to be more and more sequential, and more the same kind of flake over and over again. I'm working on symmetry. I got to maintain that symmetry. Or it's not going to look right. And I got to scoop this side out here. It's basically beveling this side. So let's try to scoop this out. Yeah, like that. Okay, so I could do this one side at a time, or I could work back and forth. Let's just do one side at a time. And if that doesn't work, like if I just not getting it, I'll switch back and forth. Yeah. So I'm not supposed to go too far past the middle. If I can help it, I'm not supposed to go past the middle at all. That one went a little bit too far, but it's okay. But see, I'm trying for these longer flakes. I just got to get adjusted to the material. I can still do percussion right now at this stage, even though it's not as accurate as pressure. But as time progresses, I'm going to need to use pressure to be more accurate. Okay? All right. Right now, I'm still able to create these beveling flakes with percussion. Let me take off some of this mess over here. It's just a little lumpy down there. Okay. Now I'll be abrading this whole edge up until the very last pass. That was a little bit too wide. Yeah, let's see. I gotta make sure I don't create step fractures in here. How do I make sure? There's no way to make sure. It's just, I'm gonna try. In Flintknapping, there is no do, there is only try. Okay? It's the opposite of Yoda's philosophy. There's no guarantee. There's just a lot of trying. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. There is no do, there's only try. You cannot guarantee the results in Flintknapping. Okay? You can get close, but if you start thinking that you can control it, that's when you run into problems. Disappointments and bad attitudes and, depression might set in because you're not getting the guaranteed results. Yeah. So you can see very soon I'm going to start pressure flaking. I can get rid of the step fractures here if I'm careful, because I just don't like the way that looks. Let's see. It's working out, but I don't like the way it looks too crude, so let me see if I can take a little bit of those step fractures out of there. And if it still looks too crude, I'll run some flakes. But we'll see. I gotta make sure it has a twist in it, so I might leave that steppy. If I take out too much material, it won't look twisted. You'll see what I mean in a minute. Alright, so let me finish this side first. I should have enough time within this 30-minute segment. Okay, so pressure flake downward to get this edge going that way more. See how it looks. it's going to start rising up. The more narrow it gets, the further it'll start rising toward that way. Okay. And let's do another pass. This time more inward pressure for longer flakes. Nope, not like that. Not like that. So there's still a lot of downward pressure, but I'm looking to see how these flakes are traveling, because it's important. If they're causing lots of step fractures, it's going to be difficult to complete that bevel. So they've got to be pretty regular as far as the same size and shape. Makes it much easier to bevel when they're the same size and shape. Which means I gotta adjust the edge to my technique. The technique generates a certain type of flake. There are different techniques that can produce the same types of flake, but that's what that is. A technique is a way to generate a certain type of flake. And a certain type of flake can be generated with several techniques usually. Now there's a few exceptions. As far as I can tell, there are some exceptions, but not many. Usually you can achieve the same type of flake with different techniques. Like I can generate these with percussion, these types of flakes, but it's so much more predictable with pressure. Yeah. So you can see that this edge is rising. I'm going to be doing the same thing on the other side. You can already see it's starting to develop a twist. But this is a sharpening technique. Believe it or not, this twisting, it's a sharpening technique. It's a way to sharpen it by beveling in an extreme way. It's an extreme beveling technique. In my view, in my opinion. The aerodynamics of the point itself, when it's small like this, is not very significant. So I don't consider it some sort of aerodynamic enhancement or modification. I consider it a sharpening technique. Okay? I might change my opinion in the future, but for now, that's my final answer. This sharpening technique. This twisting. It allows you to sharpen an edge that's on a thick blade. Okay? And you know, it maintains a certain amount of strength also when it has that twist. It may actually make the point stronger upon penetration into the target with that twist. It might. I don't know. I don't have any data on that. But that is a possibility. Okay, so every pass I make, I've got to grind it. All right, so I'm going to leave it like that for now, and then work on this other side, okay, on the next segment. So this is what I got so far. It's an extreme bevel, okay? And as it gets narrower, it gets more twisty. Okay, so I'm going to do the other side on the next segment. Let's see, how do I hold this? We'll take a picture of that. And let's see. Picture of this. That looks really steppy. I might just clean that up a little bit later, depending on how the beveling goes on this side. Okay, next segment.